let's have a chat about WandaVision.
Westview's our home now. I want us to fit in.
We shall.
Well, welcome back, guys. It's Raw Geek here. Yes, by now you should have had time to watch WandaVision. It's streaming on Disney Plus. There's been 3 episodes now, and I thought we'd talk about some of the Easter eggs, the little nods, the theories, and that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not going to go through every single Easter egg. I'm sure there are countless articles and other videos you can check for that. There are hundreds, so I'm not going to talk about every single little bit. And of course, because I'm talking about all that kind of stuff and the episodes that have already played, spoilers are going to be in this video. So if you care about spoilers, maybe turn off the video for now. If you've watched the episodes or just don't mind about spoilers, then keep watching. Now, the show is pretty good. I mean, it's difficult to say really when you're only 3 episodes in and the kind of story they're trying to tell, because it is a little bit kind of quirky and strange. But, you know, quirky is good. It's more like an unusual comedy currently, with the occasional ominous type of feeling of stuff that's going on and a nod to actually what's happening and this crazy reality that they're in. Essentially, they're in a TV show. It's a bit like 50s and 60s TV, the first couple of episodes, then it goes 70s, 80s. Each episode seems to be progressing for a decade. So it's a bit like shows like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie. And they're currently living in this town called Westview. It's, you know, suburban. I mean, it is very 50s and 60s kind of classic TV show style. So it's this kind of suburban, American kind of situation. And I can't really find any relevance as to what Westview might mean in terms of the further Marvel kind of stories and that kind of stuff. I think it's literally just a town which happens to have a W and a V, you know, like WandaVision. So whoever made the reality and used this town probably thought, oh, that would make sense for the name of the show, something like that. And yeah, essentially it's this weird pocket dimension, this pocket reality where all this is happening, where things are like a TV show, but of course there are real people in there, or at least we assume Wanda's real. I'm not sure about the others, but I think they're real people.
Norm here's a communist.
One little thing about their house where they're living, it's house number 2800 or 2800. Again, I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. I did do a quick search and there is a Marvel Earth 2800, but I can't really see any significance about it. I will mention though that the for sale sign has something written on there which I thought was quite interesting. I zoomed in and could see the people selling the house were Hopkins Realty Company. I tried to see if that was some kind of anagram, because that's the kind of person I am, whether they'd done a puzzle that way. The only kind of words I could come up with were Poncho's reality, but I don't think this is a reality about ponchos. However, it's worth mentioning that the dial code for the number places them in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and of course Wanda is played by Elizabeth Olsen, so it could just be like a little nod to her name. What I would say though, there is a character in Marvel Comics called Felicity Hopkins. Now she's a character called Lullaby, and she basically has a power where she can send people to sleep, and once they're asleep she can command them to do whatever she wants, a bit like the Purple Man. And she even looks a bit like I Love Jeannie characters, the way she dresses, which I thought was quite funny. Now what's really interesting about this is the fact that at one point Lullaby, or Felicity Hopkins, targets a particular person, and he's called Harold Cross, and she ends up working for him, and he is a real estate tycoon. So I just thought it was quite funny that, you know, Felicity Hopkins in the comics goes after a real estate tycoon, and here we can see a realtor sign Hopkins Company. I just thought that was an interesting little thing. Anyway, like I say, the show goes through the decades of classic kind of TV. So you've got like the 50s and 60s, and then it's 70s for episode 3. And they're kind of modelled, like I said before, old shows like Bewitched and things like that. I think, to me, if this reality, and we'll come on to this more later, if this reality is something to do with Wanda making it, then maybe this is just because she grew up watching reruns of old American sitcoms in Sokovia. Like, that's the show they had for America. That's what they think America is like. And as I already said, this is pocket dimension stuff. I'm sure even if you haven't watched the show and you've just seen trailers, you can kind of guess that's what's going on. This is TV show world constructed by someone or something, and they're in there, and sometimes people can kind of remember that, you know, this isn't quite right, or work out what's going on, you know, why am I here kind of thing.
Honestly, why did you come here? Why? Damn it, why?
And so I think they're all under some kind of spell. I think these residents in the show are just normal residents of Westview in present day time. We'll see more about that later on. So I suppose the real question is, who is making this weird TV land reality? Is Wanda doing it all herself? Is someone else doing it? Is someone forcing her to do it? Is she under some kind of mind control? We can see that Wanda can definitely change the reality of where she's currently in. If something happens she doesn't like, she can rewind the show.
No.
Moves things around, that kind of stuff, even subconsciously. And that's quite a good point. They do show you that subconsciously she can make things happen.
Oh, kicking? Already?
Wow. Oh, it's such a strange sensation. It's kind of fluttery. Oh, did I do that? I didn't mean to.
The reason why they do that is because in the comics, that is a big part of a storyline with her and the reality that she changes, and again, more on that later. And also, is Vision even real? Considering he came to a sticky end in the MCU movies, is he actually really there? Or is he just a construct of Wanda or someone else? So anyway, let's pick up on a few things which are big clues. They're not tiny little Easter eggs hidden away. They're big parts of this whole plot. For example, at the end of episode 1, you see someone watching what's happening unfold on TV screens, and they've got the sword logo there. Now, Sword was created by Joss Whedon in part of the X-Men run, and at one point Beast is actually running the whole of Sword. This could be more hints at mutants coming, because of course they couldn't have them before. They can only have mutates. Now they can maybe have the X-Men, and Wanda fits into all that quite nicely as well, actually. Now, SWORD in the comics stands for Sentient World Order and Response Department. They're basically a sub-department of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they're kind of tasked with keeping an eye out of other extraterrestrials coming to Earth and things like that. They're just kind of like keeping an eye out. And here are the people running SWORD. You can see that's where their outpost was, orbiting. And there can also be a nod to this where there's flying saucers, and Vision makes a mention of those because SWORD were originally tasked with making sure there's no flying saucers around, basically.
My wife and the flying saucers.
But SWORD in the MCU is something slightly different. It stands for Sentient Weapon Observation and Response Department. So sentient weapons, basically looking after superheroes. Wanda and Vision, they're both sentient weapons because they could go nuclear. So it's their job to keep an eye on such people. Whether they're responsible for her being in this reality, I don't know. I personally don't think so, because I think SWORD are essentially the good guys. They are part, they were part of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff like that. I think they're trying to work out who's done this to her. I think maybe they don't even realise this could be her doing it to herself. They don't know. They're just trying to sort of make contact. And speaking of the nods, little hat tips, something again about Joss Whedon sprung to mind with this show. Joss Whedon made Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as I'm sure you know. And in Buffy there's a character called Anya, and she's a demon. Now the actress that plays Anya is in this show. Emma Caulfield plays Dottie Jones in WandaVision. Oh, and in Buffy, Willow becomes the most powerful witch on Earth. She's got red hair. There's all sorts of things which connect. So again, maybe just like a little hat tip to that, I don't know. So then talking about the SWORD people potentially trying to help them, you do hear a voice at one point, episode 2, over the radio, saying, Wanda, who's doing this to you, kind of thing.
Wanda. Who's doing this to you, Wanda? Wanda.
Now that's Jimmy Woo. He's the FBI agent who was originally tasked with keeping Scott Lang under house arrest, if you remember that. Funny character, and it seems like he's teamed up or working with for SWORD to try and work out what's going on. So if SWORD are the ones doing this to her, it seems unlikely that they'll be trying to help unless they've got some rogue agents or something like that. Oh, and Darcy Lewis is back in the MCU. She was in 2 of the 4 movies. She was like helping Jane Foster out in The Scientist, so seems like she's graduated to helping SWORD. Probably makes sense with all the science type stuff, I guess. However, the thing about SWORD is a little bit strange, because at the end of episode 2 there's this ominous reveal of a man dressed as a beekeeper coming out of the sewer. He's got the Sword logo on him, so he seems to work for Sword. Wanda doesn't like seeing him there, so rewinds everything back, because like I say, she can at least control her reality that she's in currently. Again, she could be doing the whole thing, but we'll stave off for that for a second. Now, the only thing this could be other than Sword, if it is an infiltration of Sword or something like that, there are characters called Beekeepers in Marvel Comics. They work for a company called AIM, or Advanced Idea Mechanics, and they are an offshoot of Hydra, so they're not good guys, they're terrorists basically. They do actually feature briefly, kind of, in the MCU. They're led by Killian in Iron Man 3. He's the one that does that weird irradiating tech stuff. So they are already in the MCU. But like I said, they're called the Beekeepers, so it could be something to do with them. And there have been these hex shapes throughout the series, particularly in episode 3, because at the start, where it's a bit like the Brady Bunch, they use these hex shapes there, and that is actually the logo. That is the logo of AIM, the Beekeepers, and also it's kind of like, it's like a honeycomb, basically, like a beehive. So whether that's just representative of the current pocket dimension they're in, maybe there's loads of these little hive dimensions that they're watching, or if it is something to do with AIM, I don't know. There's all sorts of things it could be, but I thought it was interesting to mention. There is also a villain called Swarm, who's a Spider-Man villain, and we do know this show somehow connects into the Doctor Strange movie, the sequel, and the Untitled Spider-Verse type movie, but I think that's a bit of a stretch that that's anything to do with it personally. And then just a quick mention of some other things we see, for example the 3 fake adverts throughout the series so far. We got one where it's a toaster by Stark Industries. It sounds like one of Tony Stark's shells, and it has that ominous beeping. I think this is a nod to when Tony Stark's shell dropped through their home, killed the parents of Wanda and Pietro, and they were sort of laying there wondering if this shell would explode for a couple of days. So I think that's a nod to that. There's also a watch which says Strucker, and it all talks about not worrying about the past and all this kind of stuff. It's all about time, and like it sounds like they're trying to make Wanda think it's okay to be there.
Strucker, he'll make time for you.
Strucker's of course the person who made Wanda and her brother have the powers using the scepter, so I don't think he's back. Maybe he will come back even though he's dead, but I think it's just like a nod to that. And then the Hydra episode where it's saying, you just want to escape to a different place.
Escape to a world all your own, where your problems float away. Hydra Silk. Find the goddess within.
And it could be, it's basically self-referencing. Don't question what's going on around you, Wanda. Just be happy here. You're happy here. You're home now. Stay in this little weird Twilight Zone. And I will just mention the thing you see in between the floorboards. It's the helmet of Grim Reaper, which is another Marvel character. He's the brother of Wonder Man, and Wonder Man's brain patterns were used to actually create Vision in the comics. So there's a link there. Grim Reaper's tried to kill Vision before. It's all kicked off. And Wonder Man actually had feelings for Wanda, which is why they think Vision, a symphozoid or whatever you want to call him, fell in love with Wanda. It's because his original brain patterns already had that imprint of love in them, which is another crazy thing, but just thought you might want to know that. And of course the Grim Reaper is usually the sign for death, so maybe this is something ominous that's going to happen. Maybe it's just a hint that Vision is actually dead, he's not even real at the moment. Could be all sorts of things like that. And then I'm going to move on to the big theories really now. And I will briefly just mention this bit first because I think it does kind of tee it up. So at one point Agnes, who was essentially believed to be the character Agatha Harkness, who's a really powerful witch in the comics, after Dottie Jones, who remember played by the person who played the demon in Buffy, she says the devil's in the detail. Agnes says to Wanda, he's also somewhere else too.
Devil's in the details, Bev.
That's not the only place he is.
Sounds like they're kind of maybe mentioning the devil a few times there. And let's not forget Buffy takes place at the Hellmouth. I mention all this because, like I say, there's a character I think this could be hinting towards. The fact that Wanda's all of a sudden pregnant at the end of episode 2 with twins and has them in episode 3
20 fingers and 20 toes.
also plays into this person being involved. Now her twin boys called Tommy and Billy, in the comics they actually become characters called Speed and Wiccan. So like her brother was technically Quicksilver, like her brother's a speedster and she's basically a witch, her twin boys have the same powers. So what it seems like is going on, this seems to be the MCU's take on the House of M storyline. That storyline is pretty much Scarlet Witch has a mental breakdown and creates her own reality, and it's because she loses her sons. She made the sons using magic, because obviously Vision can't, really help in that department. And so she made them, but she did it classic comic book style, using some souls which were actually owned by this other character. And when he reclaimed these soul fragments, her son disappeared. So how she then got them back was eventually, when all the kind of crazy storyline stuff passed, the souls of those two boys still existed somehow, and she put them into two random boys who aren't actually blood related, and they later on discover that they've got superpowers and they're related to Wanda. It's all ridiculously messed up and confusing, but like I say, it all plays into the House of M storyline. And we pretty much know this is what's happening because there's even that wine bottle which hints at it. It says on the label Maison du Mépris, and that translates to the House of Misery, so House of M. And who is this person I keep talking about that this is referencing? Whose soul fragments were they? It is a character called Mephisto. He is essentially what humans think is Satan. And there he is. You can see he looks basically like Satan. It says, Mephisto is an extra-dimensional demon of immense power who often poses as Satan. He continually schemes to make bargains with people for their souls. He's actually, if you read the original Infinity Saga comics, he's the one that goads Thanos to actually snap his fingers once he's assembled the entire Infinity Gauntlet. And when he goes to do it, Mephisto's in the background going, oh my god, he's actually going to do it. Like he thinks it's really funny, and he's goaded them into doing it. He's insane. He's a horrible demon, basically. He's even how Ghost Rider got his powers, because he did a whole soul bargaining thing there and coupled them with that. Anyway. And why else? Well, red is a big colour, isn't it, in this show? It's the first colour you kind of see bleed through everything, and when Wanda makes everything go into colour. Red hair, her costume's red, Vision's red, and also there's that chewing gum scene. Vision eats a big red.
Care for a stick of big red?
Oh. Who do you often call the big red? Satan, right? The Buffy stuff, which I don't know if that is actually linked, but it could be a nod because Joss Whedon is kind of heavily involved in that kind of stuff. So, we've got the Hellmouth, we've got demons talking about the devil from Buffy in this show. Got red everywhere. Like, to me, and the storyline of House of M, I think this could be teeing up Mephisto. He himself has his own pocket dimension, which he basically calls Hell. So, it all kind of ticks lots of boxes. Anyway, just really quickly coming back to other things before we talk more about that. Just so you know that those two superheroes, which I mentioned earlier, Speed and Wiccan, they are in the Young Avengers. Some people think maybe this is queuing up a Young Avengers show or movie. We know we've got Kate Bishop being introduced in the Hawkeye series, so it could be some young blood coming out and they're going to make a new Avengers, something like that. And we will also talk about Monica Rambeau. Now, in WandaVision, in the show, in the reality, she's called Geraldine. I think she's essentially just infiltrated to try and help out, and she's a sword agent. Wanda kind of doesn't like finding out that she shouldn't really be there, if that makes sense. In the comics, Monica Rambeau is the second Captain Marvel. You see her in the movie Captain Marvel for MCU as a child. She's now grown up. So whether she gets her own powers, maybe because of this whole thing that's going on, maybe some of the powers that Wanda had go into her. More on that in a second. So at the end of the show, when she talks to her, Geraldine, or Monica Rambeau, who's either partly under the spell of the reality they enter and just remembering why she's there as a sword agent, or she's been playing a character and pretending the whole time, I'm not sure. She kind of tries to bring Wanda back to thinking about actual reality, because she mentions about her brother being killed by Ultron.
He was killed by Ultron, wasn't he?
Wanda does not like this, and she goes a bit kind of bunny boiler psycho.
What did you say?
What did you say about Pietro?
Hey, I'll take a shift rocking the babies.
No, I think you should leave.
Oh, Wanda, don't be like that.
The next thing you know, Monica Rambeau is being flung out of that pocket dimension. You see it's kind of like all pixelated like it's a TV show.
Where's Geraldine?
Oh, she left, honey. She had to rush home.
into the real life present day Westview. Lots of soldiers around, you know, sword, shield, whoever, FBI, whatever they are there. And then she's got this like red light or red sort of mist around her, and that's kind of like Wanda using her powers because she kind of has the powers of all the stones. She was made using the Mind Stone, and we see her change reality and it goes all red like the ether. So Monica Rambeau's got all this red stuff around her. It could just be that that's her being thrown out and that's the end of the bit of that, or it could be that those powers go into her. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much that she gets powers from that, but it's worth mentioning. And then I do have to talk about this bit of footage. To me, that looks like she's kind of dressed in the sort of clothes you'd expect someone would wear if they were in an asylum of some description. So is she in a padded cell essentially because she had the breakdown and are they keeping her there? And is she from that cell then making this reality around her? She could have had a break is what I'm trying to say and made all this stuff happen. Or she was in such a fragile state, whether she's in a psychiatric ward or not, that someone else came along, like Hydra or whoever, and thought, oh, this would be good to play a trick on her. Or Mephisto's doing it. But I thought this scene was really important because it does look like she's had a breakdown, so I think this might be before the show starts rather than later. And also this bit, it looks to me like she's reconstructing the Mind Stone. So did she genuinely reconstruct the Mind Stone and Vision, and they're now real? So it's not just like a figment of the imagination wandering around, and once that reality goes, he's gone. Maybe she did reconstruct the Mind Stone herself. She's that powerful. She brought it back, so Vision's actually alive and well. And there are just loads of little bits throughout the show that are clear nods as to this is a constructed reality, home is where you make it, all this kind of stuff, and that Wanda either subconsciously or consciously against her will, we don't know, is kind of suffering with a bit of a fractured mind and is kind of like suffering from denial, I suppose, to a certain extent as well. Like the scene when she says her husband's got an indestructible head. Well, we know that's not true, is it?
My husband and his indestructible head.
So it's kind of like a denial. You know, she's brought him back and doesn't want anyone, especially Vision, to ever think that he could be killed by something, because that will make him maybe remember the previous events and he'll know that this is all an illusion, a facade. So it's like a denial or a doubling down of the lie. So anyway, as a quick wrap up, House of M storyline seems to be going on. Check that out if you want to know more about that or read it yourself. Sword seems to be involved. I think they're good guys. Maybe they got some bad guys inside, I don't know. There's these hex things everywhere, so maybe it's talking about AIM, which is that terrorist cell, basically Hydra. Are they being kept against their will by Sword or AIM or Mephisto? Or is it all down to Wanda? If it is that Mephisto's created this reality and she's not quite aware, but now and again realises, but wants to be there because it's her happily ever after, and so it could be that Mephisto's using her mind to then make this reality, if that makes sense, so like a conduit through her. If that is the case, it kind of reminds me of the episode in Supernatural when Loki, who, spoiler alert, is actually the Archangel Gabriel, but don't worry about that, creates a TV show and puts Sam and Dean in it, and they're like, what the hell, what's going on? It's like a reality that they've constructed. It kind of reminds me of that. This is all like a weird Twilight Zone thing, especially the characters don't want to kind of annoy Wanda, and they're conscious of other characters they're not aware of, like Monica Rambeau we were talking about earlier. The other characters in the town who I think are real people, because of Wanda as a paranoia, they're picking up on the spell, and so they don't like the outsider either, because they know that could hurt the reality they're currently in, and all the walls will come crashing down. So Wanda kind of like is controlling everyone under this spell.
Vision! Is Geraldine inside with Wanda?
Yes, why?
No family. No husband.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
No home.
And if it is Mephisto related, I'm not so sure he'd be kind of introduced as a big reveal in the show, but it could be that it's teeing him up, like I said earlier, because of the fact that we know this show somehow links to Doctor Strange 2, The Multiverse and Madness, and they say it's more like a horror movie with a big bad, weird extra-dimensional demon type person. If that's the case, that could be Mephisto. Or it could just be Nightmare as rumoured. They're similar type of characters. Maybe it'll be both. But anyway, I could be wrong there, but hopefully you enjoyed some of the bits I've talked about, some of the theories. If you had that theory yourself, or if you've got a different one about something, let me know down below. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. I probably won't do another video on it until maybe it's finished. Might do like a recap. Was I right? What was wrong? Maybe something like that. But hopefully that'll do for now and you enjoyed that. So guys, if you like that, please click like, make sure you subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you on the next video. And until then, remember, home is where you make it. Okay, bye. Guys, if you're still here, you're awesome! But as you are still here, why not check out some of my other videos? Oh, and if you haven't already, please click subscribe. Laters, haters.